Will we see another first-round surprise during tonight's festivities again? Where will the drafters push Daryl Henderson up to? And who will have the best squad when all the dust settles after this draft tonight? Follow along with the live draft board tonight and listen to our pick-by-pick analysis as we call the action from the 2021 FFPC Pros vs. Joe's Sweet Baby Jesus League number 3 to see who will win a 2022 FFPC main event squad. We've got a great show for you. Farrell Elliott is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now listening to the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, presented by MyFFPC.com, with your hosts Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here's Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott.
Greetings and salutations to all the Balkaholics and Gerzakin addicts Gerzakin addicts. Dave's not doing the show tonight. The Farrelliacs, because Farrell is doing the show. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank Rob, our mutual friend and producer, and thanks to the Quiet Hollers for that awesome intro music. Get all their music at quiethollers.com. Welcome to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, presented by MyFFPC.com. I am, of course, your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman. My co-host is the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Farrell Elliott. Tonight we have the third of 6 extra special episodes for you. It's the 2021 FFPC Pros vs. Joe's Sweet Baby Jesus League number 3 draft tonight, and we will be covering it for you for the next 2 hours. You can follow the live draft board at youtube.com/highstakesfantasyfootball. Shout out to the chat room right now. We got a lot of familiar faces in there. Henry Muto, the Bourbon City Ballers, John Terry, and then the champs, the defending champs in the Pros vs. Joe's, Biplab Mandel and Hudson Kern-Reeb, along with Shane Hallum, who drafted here on Sunday night in the PVJ. You guys can post any questions you might have in there. You can also connect with us on Twitter. The show is at HSFF Hour. I am at Eric Balkman. Farrell is at J. Farrell Elliott. The Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship is at KFFSC. And, of course, the FFPC at, you guessed it, FFPC. Facebook.com/HSFF Hour is where you can get in touch with the show. And if you want to give us a call tonight and talk about the draft, please do. Let us know your thoughts. Who's screwing up? Who's crushing it? We want to know from you, the viewing public. 347-426-3682. That's 347-GAME-OVA. Feel free to email the show at the inbox, highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com. If you have any questions for us, we will get to them as much as we can throughout the broadcast tonight. Thanks to, once again, our producer and mutual friend, Rob, and our audio engineer, my best friend, Bryce. As a reminder, Monday is the deadline day for the 2021 FFPC main event early draft slot announcement. So when you get your team paid off in full, you'll get your draft slot on August 1st. And remember, if you already have a team in the FFPC main event, you're thinking about maybe adding another one, $400 off each additional team you add on. Doesn't matter if you're drafting online from the comfort of your own home or if you're drafting live at Planet Hollywood in Las Vegas. Square those balances away now at myffpc.com. Don't forget about our inaugural best ball tournament, our mid-stakes Football Guys Players Championship, our best Cinco de Best Ball for $5, of course, our best ball and dynasty startups, all at myffpc.com. Ladies and gentlemen, let's introduce tonight's lineup in the PVJ number 3 for 2021. Josh Hayes from Rotoballer leading things off from the 1 spot, followed by longtime FFPC drafter and a very accomplished player, Rob Vieira, drafting 2nd. Alien Fantasies, David Dodds picking 3rd, and the champ, the overall champ from last year, one half of the championship squad from last year, Biplab Mandel, he is hitting cleanup. I know Kern-Reeb is in the chat tonight. I want to know, Kern and Bip, are you guys together again this year, or is this just Bip's team? Hopefully you guys are together because you made magic happen last year. Please let me know there. 5th is John Daigle from NBC Sports Edge. Derek Kappas right after him. Dynasty Depot's Nelson Verbit drafting 7th, followed by the FFPC Joe, Robert Coe. Darren Armani, the godfather of the FFPC Pros vs. Joes from Fantasy Mojo, is indeed drafting 9th tonight. Matt and Andrew Stone follow him at 10. Marcus Grant from NFL.com is picking 11th. Edward and Mike Vu are picking 12th tonight, ladies and gentlemen. They are already through the first round. These guys mean business tonight. So let's get to it and tell you exactly what happened in the first round. Christian McCaffrey to Josh Hayes with the first overall pick. Dalvin Cook to Rob Vieira with the second pick. Travis Kelce right after that, the first tight end off the board at the 103 to David Dodds, followed by Alvin Kamara to Biplab Mandel, the defending overall champ at 4. Ezekiel Elliott to John Daigle, Austin Eckler to Derek Kappas, followed by Derrick Henry to Nelson Verbit. So we're seeing a pretty familiar refrain here. 6 of the first 7 picks are indeed running backs tonight. Darren Waller, the second tight end off the board. Darren Waller goes to Robert Coe at the 108, followed by Saquon Barkley to Darren Armani in Fantasy Mojo at the 9. The first wideout selected comes at the 110. That is Tyreek Hill tonight. And then the final 2 picks of the first round, George Kittle to Marcus Grant, Antonio Gibson to Edward and Mike Vu, as round 1 is now complete. And Farrell, as we look at this first round draft board tonight, I believe this is the first time we have seen 3 tight ends go in the first round in a Pros vs. Joes competition this year. You think that's going to be the norm as we get closer to the start of the season, seeing Kelce, Waller, and Kittle all go in the first round?
No, Balky, I don't. First time for everything, but this will be the outlier. What is not the first time for everything is Ezekiel Elliott before Derrick Henry, and what may be the first time, probably not, but the first time I've noticed it, Austin Eckler in front of Derrick Henry. So a shake-up in this round with how the running backs are going, I think, is the news here.
Antonio Gibson, I think this is the first time we've seen him in the first round. What about that becoming the norm? Because he's picking up a lot of steam, a lot of hype for being a first-round pick. Obviously a rocked-up guy at 220 pounds, and he can catch the football, and that offense looks a lot better than it was last year.
Yes, sir, and he supplants Jonathan Taylor as the first-rounder, so it's natural that Gibson would be the newest running back to join that first round. There's some other guys that, based on preseason, that we could see flirting with that first round. One of them right down the road from you, Buck.
That's true, and we will get to that in the second round right here. Let's go forward. The first pick of the second round is indeed Joe Mixon at the 201 to Edward and Mike Vu, followed by Jonathan Taylor, a guy who used to play right down the road from me in Madison. Jonathan Taylor, the former Badger, now Colt, to Marcus Grant from NFL.com. Trio of receivers right after that, Stephon Diggs to Matt and Andrew Stone. Devontae Adams to Darren Armani with the 204, and then you see DeAndre Hopkins go off the board to Robert Coe as the 4th receiver selected tonight. Najee Harris pairs with Nelson Verbit. This is the second time we've seen the Alabama backfield combo for one of the Pros vs. Joes drafters. Nelson Verbit from Dynasty Depot starts his draft off with Henry and Najee Harris. Derek Kappas pairs Calvin Ridley and his monster target share to Austin Eckler in the second round. And then another triple running back attack here. Aaron Jones to John Daigle. Clyde Edwards-Helaire to Biplab Mandel, who I just found out is no longer with Kern Reeve as teammates in the Pros vs. Joes. And by the way, overall champs were those guys. Nick Chubb right after that to David Dodds from Alien Fantasy. Kyle Pitts makes an appearance in the second round tonight. Rob Vieira, really smart, high-stakes player. Rob Vieira takes him at the 211 tonight. DK Metcalf right after that to Josh Hayes from Rotoballer. This is interesting, Farrell. And we'll talk about the second. We'll break down the second round in full, but let's talk about this Kyle Pitts selection. Rob Vieira was almost on the end. Now, he could have waited to take Kyle Pitts in the third round. In fact, if you look at his FFPC ADP, which we will praise Darren Armani from FantasyMojo.com for compiling all the great ADP and all the great FFPC data that you should, if you're playing in the FFPC, you need to be a subscriber. It's very inexpensive, and the amount of data you get there is tremendous for not only drafts but also the waiver wire management throughout the season. But according to that data, over the last 5 days in FFPC Best Ball Slims, he's going on average at the 306. So if you'd like to think if you're Vieira, you could get somebody else at the 211 and then grab Kyle Pitts at the 302. Farrell, he went aggressive. He got his guy at the 211 tonight, making Kyle Pitts officially a second-rounder in the Pros vs. Joes.
I don't see that much gamble in that selection because if he wanted Pitts, he may have thought the number one team would get him. He would have to draft him at the end of the second, beginning of the third. And the receivers on the board, of which he was going to grab one, Metcalf, Brown, or Justin Jefferson, and I could live with any of those guys bulky. So, I think that was behind that decision.
No, we're not going to move on to the third round yet. I do want to talk about the rest of the second round here and some of the picks that stood out to me. You look at Stephon Diggs, Farrell. I don't want to say he flip-flops back and forth with Tyreek Hill here for the first receiver off the board in FFPC leagues, but it's been close. I think Hill's moved ahead of him officially. Yeah, according to the data, Hill 110, Stephon Diggs 201. Do you have a preference if you're going receiver early and if you're going to take the first receiver off the board? Do you have a preference between Hill and Diggs?
The shootouts in the AFC West make me want to lean towards Hill. What makes me think that Diggs might be the pick is Diggs has the biggest room to improve. I think Diggs could actually break through some record barriers that we haven't seen in a long time amongst pass catchers in the league. It's also a situation that the AFC West must tangle with the NFC East this year in scheduling. So they all get Dallas once. They all, unfortunately, get Washington Football Club once. So it's a coin flip, and it depends what I want to do with the rest of the roster. And should I want to get more Chiefs? Should I want to get more Bills? But, yeah, you can't go wrong with either player. I might lean towards Diggs in the second round rather than Hill in the first. Tonight's drafter, Matt and Andrew Stone get them both. So interchangeable for them, and they have the two best receivers in the league.
14 out of the first 24 picks tonight, running backs. That's a little bit down from what we saw the last couple of nights, and only 4 teams in this draft tonight start off running back. So the receivers won a little bit earlier tonight. Obviously, we hadn't seen 3 tight ends go in the first round before, and we saw 4 tight ends in the first 23 picks tonight too. So tight ends and receivers getting a little bit more pushed up, running backs falling slightly here tonight. Let's get into the third round because only one team started off with 3 straight running backs, and he's getting some flack from the Blog Talk Radio chat room right now about that pick. We'll get to it shortly. DeAndre Swift to Josh Hayes, the linebacker, the running back from the Lions, goes with the 301 tonight. A.J. Brown to Rob Vieira, Justin Jefferson to David Dodds. That is both those squads' first receiver tonight in the third round. J.K. Dobbins is who I was referring to. Biplab Mandel takes him with the 4th pick of the third round. That is his 3rd running back he has selected. So all running backs so far for Bip, Alvin Kamara, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and J.K. Dobbins. Mark Andrews after that as John Daigle's number 1 tight end here. And moving forward, another trio of receivers. The receivers seem to be going in bunches. Keenan Allen to Derek Pappas, Michael Thomas to Nelson Verbit at the 307, and then C.D. Lamb, the first Cowboys receiver off the board, to Robert Coe. T.J. Hawkinson, after he goes to Fantasy Mojo, the second Cowboys receiver goes off the board to Matt and Andrew Stone. They are the lone team to start off with 3 straight receivers. Chris Carson joins Marcus Grant's NFL.com team at the 311, and Allen Robinson completes the third round tonight at the 312 as Edward and Mike Foo's number 1 receiver. So a lot of receivers here, Farrell, going in round 3. That is 7 receivers going in the third round tonight. And I got to wonder if you're in a format like this, or maybe you're just drafting like a normal FFPC Slim on the website, knowing that the running backs are going early, how do you exploit that? Are you of the opinion where you want to load up on a couple of running backs right away and then scoop up the receivers in the third round like everybody else? Or do you want to flip it like Matt and Andrew Stone did tonight and avoid running backs altogether and then get target monsters like Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, and to some extent Amari Cooper as well?
I like what both of these teams are doing. And in a year's draft like we have this year that is so deep at wide receiver, I cannot argue with what Biplab Mandel is doing. And if anybody's giving him trouble over Dobbins, I don't understand it. Dobbins is the lead running back for a team that is designed and directed and it wants to fulfill their destiny by running the football. And he's going to get many, many chances to do just that in that offense. And so to have Dobbins in the third round is a wonderful thing. But what would bother me about starting the three receivers, and they are glorious receivers, Hill, Diggs, Cooper, they enter now what is being kicked around, and I don't agree with this terminology, but what is being kicked around in rounds 4 through 6 as the running back dead zone. And I can find running backs in the dead zone I like, but lots of people are pointing their fingers and saying that the 4th or 5th and 6th round is a difficult place to get running backs. And that's where this team is going to get their first one as we move into that round later. I don't necessarily agree with it. These would be the most two interesting teams to watch. I don't necessarily think, I guess what I'm going to say is if I'm going to take those three wide receivers, I hope with my 4th pick, I'm going to have a tight end that I want to go with. But guess what? They're all gone. The top tier tight ends are through 3 rounds here are all in the books, and they're on somebody else's roster.
I want to ask you about Dobbins here a little bit because you loved him being selected by Biplab Mandel at the 304. And for what it's worth, his ADP in this format, running back 17 at the 307. So technically, if you want to look at ADP, he went and got him a little bit early. But obviously, we're picking at nits. He's not going to get him in the 4th round, so you got him right there. The reason I bring up Dobbins, and John Terry pushing back a little bit on Biplab Mandel's 3rd-round pick, saying he screwed that pick up. He did not like the Dobbins pick for Bip there. Last year in 15 games, Dobbins only had 18 catches in his career at Ohio State. He got at least 20 catches every year, but he never topped 26. Are you concerned about J.K. Dobbins being an effective pass catcher in that Baltimore offense going forward this year, Farrell?
Well, I'm concerned about everybody in the Baltimore offense being an effective pass catcher besides the tight end. The tight end's going to catch the passes. And now no one else is going to catch the passes. So what you're living with is a team that will pound the ball. And what he doesn't get in passing yardage and receptions, he will get in red zone touches. And hopefully for Biplab and everyone else who gets in the business with Dobbins, they will be in a situation to benefit from those multiple scores. Now, if you're talking about pass-catching running backs in this format, they're out there. It's going to be difficult in the 3rd round of this draft to put any one together as a running back that's going to get big passing numbers. Even in the 4th round, you might say that some of those guys are challenged with catching balls. This is what you get when you don't go running backs in the first 2 rounds. Your running back that is going to get quality and quantity of carries is most likely not going to have catches.
Moving on into the 4th round, that is now complete here in the PBJ Sweet Baby Jesus number 3 draft tonight. Terry McLaurin was the first pick of the 4th round to Edward and Mike Vu. That is their second receiver to go with Allen Robinson there. Marcus Grant gets his number 1 wideout, and it's Robert Woods out of the Rams at the 402. Pair of running backs after that. Miles Sanders is the first running back selected by the Stones. That is Matt and Andrew there at the 403, followed by David Montgomery. He goes to pair with Saquon Barkley in that backfield for Darren Armani. Chris Godwin after that, that's the 3rd straight receiver drafted by Robert Coe. No running backs yet as he is loading up on pass catchers, Waller, Hopkins, Lamb, and now Godwin. Nelson Verbit, a little bit of the opposite. Josh Jacobs is his selection in the 4th round, and that's his 3rd running back. Henry, Harris, and now Jacobs out of Las Vegas. Mike Evans is the 3rd straight receiver drafted by Derek Kappas, so he's obviously putting a premium on the receiver position. Ridley, Keenan Allen, Mike Evans. Now DJ Moore to John Daigle. That's his number 1 receiver. First quarterback selected once again tonight is Patrick Mahomes. He goes to Biplab Mandel, eschewing a pass catcher once again to focus on his backfield. 3 running backs and a quarterback so far for the notorious BIP. Tyler Lockett to David Dodds out of Alien Fantasy. Tyler Lockett is his 2nd receiver. Then you're looking at Julio Jones to Rob Vieira, by the way, who took A.J. Brown in the 3rd round. So now he has both starting Titans wide receivers. I wonder who he's targeting at quarterback later. Josh Allen, the final selection of the 4th round here tonight as the 2nd quarterback off the board and the starting quarterback for Josh Hayes from rotoballer.com. Farrell, what do you make of these receivers getting pushed up tonight? I kind of talked about it a little bit earlier. You had, 14 running backs in the first 2 rounds. And since then, in rounds 3 and 4, there's only been 6 more running backs selected. So out of, what are we at now, 51 picks, only 20 running backs off the board. And we're seeing a lot of yellow on the board tonight, something we have not seen in the first 2 drafts of the Pros versus Joes competition this year.
It looks like a Kentucky draft, Augie, so I'll be right at home.
Yes, it does.
I will tell you, congratulations to Team 12, Edward and Mike. These guys got a steal with Terry McLaurin. I think McLaurin would have been a fine pick for team number 10. I like him better than Lamb, and I absolutely love Lamb. I like him better than Cooper. Terry McLaurin is going to propel Team 12, so they've got a good mix coming out. Godwin, Evans, back-to-back or damn near close to it. Biplab at quarterback here, that surprises me. These receivers coming up in here, these are the guys I expect. This new guy we got coming out of the number 3 hole, David Dodd, he should be challenged being with, an inexperienced drafter like he is, but he goes out and gets 100 reception Tyler Lockett. And, for the redrafts, you don't know when Tyler Lockett's going to get those 100. Pretty much count that he's going to get them. And that's the kind of player for this format. And if I was going to push up any wide receiver, that might be who I would want. And that would have been a nice way for Biplab to cure his lack of wide receivers there at the 4 spot.
Yeah, David Dodds is a guy who, along with Clayton Gray from Football Guys, I know they've won at least a couple live high-stakes drafts with the FFPC out in Las Vegas.
Oh, he's that David Dodds?
Yes, he is that David.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a whole other thing then. Okay, I understand. Very good.
Yeah, they won the 2,500 auction or the 5,000 auction or both. I can't remember. But very accomplished player as he has moved on to Alien Fantasy now and repping that brand tonight. There was one other thing that stood out to me. Oh, yeah, your McLaurin comments. So there's a couple of schools of thought on Terry McLaurin. Number one, the dude's been a target monster the last couple of years, and obviously the quarterback looks to him a lot because he is so talented. Now this year, he does get a better quarterback, but there's Logan Thomas there for a full season. They bring in Curtis Samuel. Obviously, Antonio Gibson going to take a step forward. Are you concerned about him not getting the volume this year, Farrell? Or even if he doesn't get the volume, is the story that the targets, it's going to be a better quality of targets this year instead of just pumping it to him all the time?
It's going to be a better quality of targets, going to be more downfield air yards, realize it's going to be a situation where the defense cannot key on him. Football, the greatest team sport ever invented. If you look at some of McLaurin's comments in the media, he's almost giddy about the quality of teammates and the opportunities that he's going to have in this offense. And, he's kind of wide receiver is going to keep old Fitzy young. So it's a wonderful situation. And they get to play the Cowboys twice.
Yeah, and I mean we'll talk about what Biplab did here in the 5th round. He's trying to. I think we could see him get a lot of yellow in his column going forward, given his first 4 picks. And again, Biplab Mandel, the defending overall champion with Hudson Kern-Reeve from the Pros vs. Joes last year. So he knows what he's doing here, and we will see how he carries out his strategy going forward. 5th round now complete. Let's get to it. Josh Hayes takes Farrell's Chase Claypool at the 501, followed by Cooper Kupp, 3rd straight receiver drafted by Rob Vieira, the FFPC Joe. Kyler Murray becomes the 3rd quarterback off the board tonight. He goes to David Dodds. Jamar Chase, the number 1 receiver for Cincinnati this year, is the number 1 receiver for Biplab Mandel in this league. Lamar Jackson off the board is the 2nd quarterback in this round to John Daigle. Travis Etienne joins Derek Kappas' Austin Eckler in his backfield. Eckler and Etienne is his starting 2 running backs from the 6th hole. Dak Prescott becomes the 3rd quarterback selected in the 5th round tonight. He joins Nelson Verbett's DynastyDepot.com squad. Robert Coe finally goes with a running back, the number 22 running back off the board. It is indeed Mike Davis, straight out of Hotlanta, as he will be the number 1 running back for Robert Coe. We were wondering where Daryl Henderson was going to go tonight, Farrell, and I got a text message from the Bourbon City baller, Kevin Williamson, said he was projecting Daryl Henderson to go at the 507 tonight. After we got the Cam Akers news, he was very, very close. Daryl Henderson goes at the 509 tonight. In Michael Leone's from Establish the Run draft today, the $125 best ball tournament that he did, Daryl Henderson went at the 507 in that draft. So that seems to be the spot that high-stakes players are taking him right now. That 507 to 509 range is Daryl Henderson. And we'll talk about him in a second here. But T. Higgins is the fourth receiver drafted by Matt and Andrew Stone at the 510 tonight, joining Hill, Diggs, and Cooper. Justin Herbert, the fourth and final quarterback selected in the fifth round tonight to NFL.com's Marcus Grant. Myles Gaskin, the third running back selected by Edward and Mike Vu here, going in the backfield along with Antonio Gibson and Joe Mixon. All right, so, Farrell, let's talk about this Daryl Henderson news. Obviously, it's a huge deal that Cam Akers goes out for the season with the ruptured Achilles, and Daryl Henderson steps into a really plum situation. This is a guy that, remember, the Rams traded up for, gave up a significant amount of draft capital to acquire in the draft a couple of years ago, a guy who had 1,900 rushing yards in his final season in Memphis, a guy who caught a lot of passes there and is an excellent third down running back. We got the news today from Sean McVay saying they're not necessarily interested in acquiring a veteran running back or another running back in that backfield. I don't know how you can go to battle in the 2022 season when you are a contender to win the conference championship and go to the Super Bowl, and your backfield consists of Daryl Henderson and undrafted free agent from last year, Xavier Jones. I think they're going to add somebody. So until they do, how are you treating Henderson in drafts? Is this a good spot for him in that mid to late fifth round?
I think he should go higher. I definitely think he should go in front of Davis. I've always been a big Daryl Henderson fan. I think he runs hard. I think he runs mean. His physicality overwhelms his lack of size. He's a big, strong player and a small, muscular package. I like so many things about him that I've always thought there was a disconnect between the fantasy player and the real world stats that this player was putting up when given the opportunity. I did not want to cede so many carries to Akers. That's why I haven't drafted Akers very often, because I think that Henderson is a great player to come off the bench and play. I think it is more of a 60-40 split than what most fantasy players thought of. So I believe in the player. Sure, they'll find running back help for him. They'll have to. But he's going to carry the rock, and he's going to be the number one back for this team. And I don't see that big a disconnect between the talent level of Akers and Henderson over a 17-game season. Definitely not 4 rounds. So I think he ought to be a higher draft pick than a 5-7.
And we will see how that goes going forward. Certainly it could be one of those leapfrog games where if you like them and you know you can get them in the 5th, and then some guy starts taking them in the early 5th, then you start taking them in the late 4th, then he starts going in the late 4th, and you start taking them in the early to mid 4th. And this is how players like him get pushed up in FFPC ADP for sure. So that makes a lot of sense there that he could rise in ADP. I'm with you. I think he should be going higher than the end of the 5th round as he did tonight. Speaking of the 5th round, let's move on to the round after that, which is indeed round 6. Odell Beckham kicks things off, the number 3 receiver for Edward and Mike Vu. Deontay Johnson from Pittsburgh goes to Marcus Grant. He slides a little bit after Chase Claypool. So remember, Josh Hayes taking Claypool with the first pick of the 5th round. Marcus Grant gets Deontay Johnson with the second pick of the 6th round. Adam Thielen right after that, as he makes Matt and Andrew Stone's team the first squad in this draft with, count them, 5 wide receivers. All receivers and Emmanuel Sanders so far for the Stones. The FFPC Joe is picking out of the 10 spot. Jamal Williams, he slipped a little bit tonight. Running back 25, he goes off at the 604 tonight. 4 running backs now for Darren Armani's Fantasy Mojo squad. Tom Brady to Robert Coe after that as quarterback number 7. Kenny Galladay will be the second wide receiver picked by Nelson Verbit from Dynasty Depot here in the 6th round. Kareem Hunt off the board at the 607 pick, the third running back selected by Derek Kappas, who actually you heard on this podcast roughly a month and a half ago. Brandon Ayuk after that to John Daigle, followed by Jerry Jeudy, the sophomore receiver from Alabama, now in Denver. He joins Biplab Mandel's Jamar Chase as his lone wide receivers thus far. And then a trio of running backs to end it. Chase Edmonds in Arizona. He is David Dodd's selection, followed by Trey Sermon as the penultimate pick of the 6th round here. And then Raheem Mostert, pair of San Francisco running backs to end it here with the final pick of the 6th round. Josh Hayes goes with Mostert as his number 3 running back. So Kenny Galladay is a player that we have not talked about a whole lot this season so far, Farrell. A guy that was very talented in Detroit, but very injured in Detroit. Missed a lot of time there. He goes to Daniel Jones and a new offense in New York. How do you see him faring there, split out, next to Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard, Evan Ingram, Kyle Rudolph, Saquon Barkley? How do you think Galladay does this season?
And don't forget our Kadarius Toney there, Buck. Yeah, I think he does very, very well.
And Kadarius Toney, good point.
And this is the player that I think should have been drafted by Edward and Mike. They were really impressing me, and the wide receivers that went before we got to Galladay, we've seen their best effort. We don't know what Galladay's effort's going to be, but Galladay is one of the best downfield targets in all of wide receivers. I saw a number, and let me get it, of receivers with 100 catches. He has the best average per catch. In other words, he's going to move the ball down the field, and he's going to be a target for Jones, and he's going to elevate Jones. This is the kind of player, and Nelson Verbit now has got a situation where he's only got 2 receivers, but he's got the guys that have tremendous upside, Thomas and Galladay. Thomas is a steal in the 3rd round. Galladay is a steal here for him in the 6th. Galladay at worst should be a 5th round wide receiver, and as a buzz starts in preseason, because the New York Giants, they're going to be well televised and well covered, he is going to move up this board very aggressively as we go into the redrafts into August.
Last season, Adam Thielen was clearly the number 1 Vikings receiver drafted in the majority of FFPC high-stakes drafts. Justin Jefferson followed thereafter, but Thielen was the guy. This year, it's completely flipped, Farrell. And, in fact, there's a deep, yawning chasm between Adam Thielen and Deontay Johnson, between Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson. Now, tonight, Jefferson goes at the 303 as wide receiver 8. Adam Thielen goes off the board at the 603 as wide receiver 27. Is that too big of a gap? I mean, do you think Thielen should be going it's hard for me to say Jefferson should be going later because of how talented he is, but should Thielen be going earlier?
I think Thielen's in the right spot, and we can't expect him to score the touchdowns that he did last year. And if he does, whoever is drafting in the 6th round is going to be wonderfully surprised and wonderfully happy. He's a very fine ball player. Entered the league as a free agent that nobody else wanted him. The general manager famously said at Minnesota, if I was that good, I would have drafted him. And nobody wanted this player, and he comes in to be a Pro Bowl player and an elite wide receiver, and he'll continue. He's got a couple more 2 or 3 years left in him, but that was an outlier year for touchdown receptions last year.
We have a developing situation between the 9 and 10 spots tonight in the draft. Darren Armani from FantasyMojo.com picking at the 9. Matt and Andrew Stone, the FFPC Joes, picking in the 10 spot. Farrell, they are complementary drafts so far, as we have seen Darren Armani go heavy on running backs. He's got 4 running backs, a tight end, and only 2 receivers. Matt and Andrew Stone are looking at 6 receivers and only 1 running back thus far. When you are in high-stakes drafts, Farrell, and you see something like this happening with one of the drafters next to you, do you start trying to punish him by taking more running backs, or do you kind of just stay in your own zone? Because obviously there's value falling to both these players given their team construction right now.
Oh, no, Balky. I go back to my golf days because, if somebody is hit deep in the rough and wants to use 3-wood to get out, that's their problem. I'm not going to go over and yell, hey, you probably shouldn't do that. So, he's drafted 6 wide receivers who are going to give him very, very solid performances, but he can only score 4 of them, if I am correct on that. And he's leaving some points on the board because now we're getting into the range where we're going to have some runs on some tight ends. The elite quarterbacks are going to disappear. If you're going to be so light at running back, and he continues with Miles Sanders as his only running back, there's some answers in an 18-round draft that he's going to have to make. Now, a 28 round, back in the best ball days, 28 round, I'm then curious if he's got some really great information about some rookie running backs that he think will develop by the end of the year, that he can get into 20s, that, maybe bring all this together. I think, I think he's getting a lot of attention in this draft, but I don't believe his team will have legs, especially at the running back position.
Yeah, I think you're right, and it's continuing here in the 8th round, just pounding the receivers. Love to talk to Matt and Andrew about this, too, their philosophy as we get deeper into this draft. Let's go through the 7th round before it gets away from us, Farrell. Leading things off, it's a trio of tight ends, actually. Noah Fant to Josh Hayes, Dallas Goedert to Rob Vieira, followed by Tyler Higbee to David Dodds. Dodds, who Richard Ross in the Blog Talk Radio chat right now is saying he thinks his team looks best to him so far. David Dodds is the first team to double up on tight end. Takes Kelsey in the 1st, and now Tyler Higbee in the 7th, going with 2 of the top 9 tight ends selected tonight. Juju Smith-Schuster, the 3rd Steelers receiver drafted. He is also the 3rd receiver drafted for Biplab Mandel, the defending overall champ. Robbie Anderson, after that, the 3rd receiver drafted by John Daigle from NBC Sports Edge. Russell Wilson, the 8th quarterback off the board, the 1st selected by Derek Kappas. Cortland Sutton, the 2nd Broncos receiver, off the board tonight at the 7:07 to Nelson Verbit. James Robinson, oh, how the mighty have fallen. Running back 30 tonight. He goes to Robert Coe as his number 2 running back. Well, I'll tell you what, there's something to be said for that. We'll get to that in a little bit. Devontae Smith to FantasyMojo.com's Darren Armani, followed by Tyler Boyd, 3rd receiver drafted by the drafters tonight from Cincinnati, and the number 6 receiver drafted by the Stones. Hopefully these receivers that they're drafting don't have hands like Stone, Farrell, because that would be a bad combination and a bad outcome for their squad in Pros versus Joes this year. Laviska Shenault from Jacksonville to Marcus Grant from NFL.com, followed by Robert Tonyan as the 10th tight end off the board tonight, and completing the 7th round, the tight end round, essentially, as it were, tonight. 4 tight ends going in the 7th round here as we look forward to the 8th round, which we'll get to in a second. Before we get there, let's talk about this James Robinson pick, Farrell. This was a player that in the early part, I would say after his value to me, or his ADP to me, spiked after Jacksonville signed Carlos Hyde. I said this on Sunday's broadcast. Carlos Hyde represents a safe, non-threatening running back that is simply a depth guy and not a threat to become the guy in that Jacksonville backfield, despite Urban Meyer and his history from Ohio State. However, they go out and get Travis Etienne, and then James Robinson stocks plummet. But Robert Coe did not take a running back until round 5 tonight. So he gets Mike Davis in round 5, James Robinson in round 7. Farrell, sometimes when you shop at the island of misfit toys, you find a couple of gems. And if Davis and Robinson pan out the way he pounded those pass catchers with his first 4 picks, we might be looking at a pretty solid team here.
I won't comment about Davis because I'm not a Davis guy, but I am very much excited about this Robinson pick. And anytime you can get Robinson in the 7th round, you're crazy not to draft him. And we've got some teams here that passed on him, and I don't understand it. All anyone needs to do is look at the film from last year and understand that Jacksonville landed a free agent that can deliver, a college free agent that can deliver. They're not going to forget about what this player did last year. You're not going to bury this player on the bench. He had an excellent year. Etienne does not come in to supplant him, but to support him. There's enough carries for both of these players to be successful, especially when Robinson is the 7th round, and Etienne is falling too. We got him in the 5th round tonight. So the Jacksonville running back situation is going to deliver for these drafters in 5 and 7.
Travis Etienne normally goes at the 501 as running back 22. James Robinson normally goes running back 29 at the 704. If you were in a format like this, or let's say even let's wide scope it. If you were in the Football Guys Players Championship, you had the opportunity to get both of these players. Is that something that you would look to do, Farrell, because you don't have to invest more than a 5th round pick to do it? Or would you rather increase your variance and only grab one? You would stack both.
Absolutely. I believe in Football Guys, I took them in the 4th and the 5th. I guess I am the one keeping James Robinson out of the 8th round ADP. We'd have to consult the mojo about that. But I may be personally moving James Robinson up the list. But I'm frightened by those that don't see it because I wonder what they're not looking at when it comes to Robinson and Etienne. And, hey, if this coach moves in with this team and doesn't utilize the player, well, then the fault's on him. But I think he's already given us some clues of how he views these running backs and how he expects to use them.
8th round now moving forward here. We kick it off with a quarterback out of Philadelphia and also played in Oklahoma and Alabama. His name is Jalen Hurts. He goes at the 8:01. Ronald Jones out of Tampa to Marcus Grant from NFL.com. Mike Williams keeps the receiver game strong for Matt and Andrew Stone. Mike Williams, the 8:03 tonight. Also the 7th receiver selected in 8 rounds for the Stones. Aaron Rodgers off the board in the 8th round as quarterback 10 tonight. He goes to FantasyMojo.com's Darren Armani. Mike Gesicki, the 2nd tight end drafted by Robert Coe. He is the he is the 3rd team to draft a pair of tight ends here to double up at the position. DJ Chark out of Jacksonville to Nelson Verbit from DynastyDepot.com. Logan Thomas, the 1st tight end drafted, tight end 12 tonight. 1st tight end drafted by Derek Kappas as the FFPC Joe squares away the WFT tight end. Did I say WFT or WTF? I always get it mixed up, and it's going to get worse as the night goes on. Debo Samuel right after that to John Daigle. Michael Gallup, the 4th straight receiver drafted by Biplab Mandel. We talked about this, Farrell. We said that there is a possibility that Biplab Mandel was going to start pounding the receivers after starting off with 3 straight running backs and a quarterback. He does just that with Michael Gallup here as wide receiver 40, and then another trio of running backs to end it. Damian Harris to David Dodds, Michael Carter to Rob Vieira, and Leonard Fournette, Lombardi Lenny, to Josh Hayes from rotoballer.com at the 8:12. Farrell, I don't know if we have, and I apologize to the listeners who've been dutifully listening, the last couple of nights. My apologies if we talked about this already. Do you think Damian Harris is going too low, running back 32 tonight? I feel like you look at him, and he's a player, again, that league backfield. We've been fooled by New England running backs. Are you staying away from him and just letting somebody else draft him?
No, I would consider this player. You brought this player to my attention, and I think that with the offense that Coach Belichick will be putting on the field this year, the running back 1 is going to be successful, whoever he is, and it's going to be Harris. His is not only the job to lose, his is the job to keep. There's no one that thinks that's going to take this job away from him. James White's going to contribute at the position, and I think they make a tremendous 1-2 punch. No, Harris here is a real bargain, I believe.
Moving forward here, as the 9th round is now complete, let's get through that, ladies and gentlemen. Jarvis Landry off the board to Josh Hayes from Rotoballer at the 9:01. Surprise, surprise, right? We talked about this after Rob Vieira took Julio Jones and A.J. Brown back-to-back in the 3rd and 4th round. He does indeed get Ryan Tannehill as the 11th quarterback off the board at the 9:02 tonight. The Titans stack is strong with him. Rob Vieira getting Tannehill, Brown, and Jones. Well, I think he gave us the layup, right? I mean, he was dropping the breadcrumbs. All we had to do was pick it up. Zach Moss to David Dodds from Alien Fantasy after that, and then a pair of cousins, both with the last name Brown. Antonio to Biplab Mandel, Marquise to John Daigle. A couple of quarterbacks after that, Matthew Stafford to Derek Kappas. So he backs up Russell Wilson right away. Wilson in the 7th, and then Stafford in the 9th, followed by Joe Burrow, who is backing up Dak Prescott for Nelson Verbit. Melvin Gordon to Robert Coe, and then you have Curtis Samuel going to Fantasy Mojo. Hallelujah! It is a running back to Matt and Andrew Stone finally, as they had 7 receivers in the first 8 picks. Now they go Tony Pollard, so the top 2 running backs they have there, Miles Sanders and Tony Pollard. I'll tell you this, if Ezekiel Elliott goes down, this is the way that you win Pros versus Joe's League. Will that happen? I don't know. We'll see. Kenyon Drake after that to Marcus Grant, and then Irv Smith to Edward and Mike Vu. Philosophical drafting question here for you, Farrell, as we are starting to see some of these teams back up their quarterbacks. If you drafted Prescott in the 5th, would you be looking to back him up in the 9th? If you drafted Russell Wilson in the 7th, would you be looking to back him up in the 9th already? I mean, I guess for me, if I'm going quarterback in the first 7 rounds, I'm probably not going to back him up right away in the 9th round. Your thoughts on that philosophy?
Absolutely not. I'm actually going to hang in there as long as I can and pick up 2 guys from between 14 and 18. And there are some guys out there that pair up very, very well with Dak Prescott that would go later. I'm also going to look at some of the cheap stacks that I can get, quarterbacks like Jones, Wentz, Carr, who will match up very well with some of the other players I might draft, and that's what I want to do in putting together my roster. So now I've got to chase some players to see if they match up with these quarterbacks, and I know that would not be anything that I would want to do here. And I want to give a tip of the cap to Darren Armani, who was able to pick up Aaron Rodgers in this league, this 17-week league, after Jalen Hurts. So nice job there, Dan.
Former guest of the show, John Terry, who's got a great verbal spat going with the defending overall champ, Biplab Mandel, in the Blog Talk Radio chat room right now, which you can join, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening live, blogtalkradio.com/HSFF. Talking a lot of smack, too. I've never seen a defending champ get so much flack in a draft tonight,
so
but I know John Terry and Biplab Mandel are buddies.
Smack while he's drafting? Is that what's happening here?
Yeah, and John Terry is telling him you can't multitask, Bip. You've got to either smack talk or draft because you cannot do both. And so that's what's happening right now. But John Terry also pointing out when we talked about backing up the quarterback situation, he says he doesn't have a problem with it in best ball. If this were redraft, like a Football Guys Players Championship or an FFPC main event, he would not be necessarily down with it, but he understands it here. Shane Hallum, also who drafted Sunday night in the FFPC Pros versus Joes, he says it is a steal to get the lead running back in Arizona in round 10. Well, I thought the lead running back in Arizona went in round 6. We'll tell you who went in round 10. Let's face it, if you're listening to the show, you probably know who we're talking about. Final thing I'm gonna mention here in the 9th round, Farrell, before we get to the 10th. Zach Moss goes to David Dodds here in the 9th round. And he's got an interesting squad shaping up. Only 2 receivers, but again, you only have to start 2 receivers. Zach Moss becomes his 4th running back. I feel like he is kind of pulling away a little bit in the Moss versus Singletary thing. And I can't, this is really going to irritate me. I think it was Peter Overzet was talking about this. And a lot of times we shy away from these committee running backs, right, in the mid rounds because, like, what's the end game there? What's the value? Well, I think the value is, and I had not thought about this before. Think about this. It's a low draft capital investment to get a guy like Zach Moss in the 9th round. But if Devin Singletary were to go down, even for a few games, you're talking about like a top 15, top 20 running back in that elite offense. So it would make some sense to use a few picks on players like that. We see David Dodds getting Damian Harris in the 8th. We see Zach Moss going to him in the 9th. Your thoughts on taking either Moss or Singletary in the mid-rounds of drafts like this?
Nothing wrong with that. Singletary gives me pause because Singletary's been given so many opportunities to be successful, and he has come up short. Moss's inefficiency is largely brought on by his physical situation and his injury history. At least that's what I believe. And I think Moss will be given the opportunities, and should he stay healthy, and everyone says that, of course, but in his situation, it's a dire need that he stays out of the medical room. Now, speaking one thing I'd like to say about Biplab, yes, he doesn't need to multitask, but this surprises me that Biplab and Hudson Kern-Reeve are not partnering on this team. There's a story they're developing. We need some investigative journalism. But see, if you still had the professor in doing his contribution to the trash talking, in my case, you don't really figure out that you've been trash talked by the professor until about 4 days later, because he's so artful at it. So, I think that's I think the partnership, the inequities of drafting alone from giving up this fine partnership may be at play here.
Hudson Kern-Reeve, by the way, the king of Cornell University. I think we should, in one of the best professors they have there. Sometimes I think, much in the same way when Dennis Miller was on Monday Night Football, Farrell, I needed to have Google handy next to me so I could Google some of the things he was saying. Sometimes, and then like with Kern, it's like with the insults. Sometimes you start thinking about it, you start researching it, and like, I don't think Kern agreed with me there at all. Hudson was totally against with what I said once you break it down and once you research it on the web. So I think there is something to be said for that there as well. Let's move on to the 10th round as it has just completed, and we move into the second half of Pros vs. Joe's number 3 here, ladies and gentlemen, tonight. The first pick of the 10th round was indeed Trevor Lawrence to Edward and Mike Vu. That backs up Jalen Hurts for him. Trey Lance, the backup quarterback for Justin Herbert for Marcus Grant. A.J. Dillon, the number 3 running back to Matt and Andrew Stone. So starting to pound these, high upside backup running backs are the Stones now from the 10 spot tonight. Evan Engram backing up T.J. Hawkinson for Darren Armani, and then James Conner was that running back that Shane Hallum was alluding to in the Blog Talk Radio chat tonight, saying that Conner, not Edmonds, is the running back to own in Pittsburgh. In Arizona this year. Gus Edwards right after that, running back 41, and that is Nelson Verbett's 4th running back as he gets him in the 10th round, followed by Jamal Williams, the backup running back in Detroit, or the 1B running back in Detroit, I should say, based on the coaches, what they're saying there. Jamal Williams goes to Derek Kappas. Adam Troutman, the New Orleans Saints tight end 15 tonight, and the second tight end drafted by John Daigle. His real-life teammate Latavius Murray goes as running back 43 and the number 4 running back drafted by Biplab. So Biplab Mandel gets running backs in the first 3 rounds, avoids the position again until round 10, and then you're looking at Brandon Cooks to David Dodds, Will Fuller to Rob Vieira, Michael Pittman to Josh Hayes. So as we look back on the 10th round, Farrell, I suppose I should be the one talking about this because I'm closest to the Packers here. I'm really starting to like A.J. Dillon this year. I think the thing, if you look at from a fantasy aspect, A.J. Dillon versus Jamal Williams, can he replicate what Jamal Williams did last year? Can he be better than Jamal Williams? I think the thing that scares me most, Farrell, is this a guy that can pick up the blitz? Is this a guy that the Packers are going to trust picking up those rogue linebackers coming at Aaron Rodgers? Because if he is, he's going to be on the field more, and it's going to become more of a 50-50 split. We've seen Green Bay really, really want to protect Aaron Jones and keep him healthy for a full season. And this could be a 50-50 split, or at least approaching it, if Dillon can pick up the blitz. And if he does that, I think A.J. Dillon's a great pick in the 10th round.
I will defer to you on these matters of the Green Bay running backs, but it makes sense to me. Now, I'm seeing Dillon in redraft and in football guys go a lot higher, and I'm not comfortable with him as a single-digit back. But if you get into late 9 and early 10 and what we're dealing with here, why not? There are a number of running backs in this 10th round that I really, really like. Gus Edwards is an interesting player in the fact that you cannot seem to separate this player from the ball. He's a great ball security, and that will get you opportunities down at the goal line. We don't necessarily know about Javonte Williams yet, what we're going to see, but I like this player as well. Why not Dillon here? And what I would like to congratulate is Josh Hayes on the number 1 spot. I think Michael Pittman catches more balls than any of the players that were drafted in the 8th round here, and this is the last player in the 10th round, and I think that's a steal. I don't understand. I'm obviously overdrafting this player everywhere, and in this format, I cannot understand why he's still around in double-digit round.
It is the 3rd night in a row we are talking about Michael Pittman being a steal in this draft. We love our Michael Pittman on this podcast for sure. Let's go out to the phone lines right now. I want to hit up the 707 who is calling us right now. You are on the air with Balky and Farrell for live coverage of the Pros vs. Joes on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. Who are we speaking with?
Balky, what's up? It's Josh Hayes, man.
Josh Hayes from rotoballer.com. My good friend here, we just got done praising you for the Michael Pittman pick.
Sir.
Were you surprised he was still out there in the 10th round, Josh?
People aren't going to believe that you didn't know it was already me on hold. You know what I mean? They're going to think that you cheated up perfectly.
Well, so we'll throw some stones at you for taking Baker Mayfield too early, and we'll tease the next coming round.
Fair and balanced. I appreciate that. I am looking at Matt Stone, and I'm looking at Fantasy Mojo, Mr. Darren Armani here, and I feel like 2 or 3 quarterbacks are going to get plucked here in the next round or two. And I don't want to be stuck with like a best ball QB in the 20s. I know I'm supposed to be confident about Josh Allen, but I also don't know. And it seems like to me that the way that this draft is shifting out is that like a lot of teams are going to end up with maybe 3 QBs on the roster. I'm trying to decide now if I need to be in on that or if I can cross my fingers and just hold on with 2 and 18 rounds. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Tell you this, Josh, based on what we saw the last couple of nights, I think Farrell and I were both kind of surprised, or I don't want to speak for Farrell, but I know I was kind of surprised to see so many teams load up with three quarterbacks. I feel like in this type of format where, again, the winner gets a 2022 FFPC main event team. Second place, you don't even get a pair of socks. You know what I mean? So, like, you are going for broke and trying to win, right? And so I think to get 3 quarterbacks on your team, I don't know if that's necessarily the best way to spend your draft picks. So I would say, you know, for me, like, you already got Josh Allen, you already got Baker Mayfield. I don't know if I'd mess around with it after that, but I'm not you.
Yeah, I'm
sending
you in for one more quarterback. One more quarterback is what I want for this roster. One more guy.
All right,
for Josh's?
I'm
okay. All right.
Yeah, I'm always of the opinion in best ball is that, like, you know, you should probably, you know, hope for the best, plan for the worst in the highest scoring positions, you know, and this is why I like having 4 running backs on the roster in the first half of the draft, and why I will always give consideration to a third QB because, you know, the best laid plans, right? I mean, Josh Allen has been in the league for exactly 1 season out of 3, right? So, you know, and I want to have as much insurance policies as possible. Like, the last thing I want to do is have a team that was this close to winning, but had an unlucky injury situation that cost me from taking home the title. So I kind of feel like if I feel good about wide receiver and I feel good about running back, then maybe I just need to focus a little bit more on some insurance for tight end and maybe quarterback, and hopefully that's good enough to make a run this year.
Josh, 8 teams so far, 9 teams in this draft have doubled up on tight end. 2 teams have tripled up on tight end. As I look at your roster, you are only one of 4 teams without a second tight end. You've drafted in this contest several times. Do you feel like the dual tight ends are a little bit overrated, that it takes away from the rest of your roster as you get Fant in the 7th, but then that's been it for you so far?
No, I think I'm going to end up here with 3 tight ends on the roster here because I waited on Noah Fant and I really like him. But we know that the quarterback situation is a little bit unstable in Denver. Maybe Aaron Rodgers stabilizes that. Who knows? But I think that I'm going to have to purchase some insurance here. I was this close to actually taking Kyle Pitts. If that was going to be an option for me. Fortunately,
right.
There was 1 pick before the corner. So once that happened, I thought that to me there was like a clear tier between him and like the Mark Andrews, TJ Hawkinson group, which means that I was like, going to end up waiting here towards the second half of the draft really to try to see if I could snap off a guy like, and there's probably I think maybe 3 or 4 tight ends I would feel comfortable grabbing here in the next couple rounds. So if the draft falls to me that way, I'm going to try to purchase some insurance and hope that I can grab somebody that has a chance to crack, top 12 value here for at least a portion of the weeks for 17 games this season.
So who are you looking at right here at 12 and 13? Are the picks locked in? Do we know who it's going to be?
No, I mean, I'm going to trust that not everyone is listening to the draft or that they care or that it won't, affect the draft strategy here. And I think that Zach Ertz is probably a little bit of an undervalued asset. He's gone in a number of those spots, but another guy that I really, don't mind taking a shot on. I've heard good things about C.J. Uzomah. I like Dalton Schultz there as well. And, if they don't end up making a move, Jack Doyle, we know Carson Wentz is typically like the tight end. So those are a couple guys that I'm definitely taking a look at.
All right, Josh, you're on Rotoballer Radio. Obviously, we listen to you every weekday morning, Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio, 6 to 7 a.m. Eastern Time, Sirius 210 XM 87. And we follow you on Twitter at Josh Hayes FS. If anybody is a fan of yours, they're listening, they're a fan of your content, what is coming up for you going forward here for Rotoballer?
So, we're on 7 days a week. That's a big, thing that's been great for us. We're looking forward to a lot of the contests in myffpc.com as well. I'm looking at competing here once again in probably some satellites get involved in the best, get myself into the main event as well. That's been really, really huge for us. We're rolling out all new player pages on rotoballer.com as well. That's something that we've put a lot of data and some information to, so you'll be able to check that out here as well pretty soon. And, if you haven't had a chance to get your 50% off subscription here and get a deal along with the FFPC as well, now's the time to do so.
All right, there it is, ladies and gentlemen. Josh Hayes, you follow him on Twitter at Josh Hayes FS. You listen to him, Rotoballer Radio, and check out rotoballer.com, one of my favorite websites for fantasy content. They do it all there. Josh is doing it all in the draft tonight. Josh, thanks so much for popping on. I really appreciate it. Good luck the rest of the way, not only in this draft, and all your drafts this year. And, hey, I think I'm going to talk to you next Monday morning on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio.
Looking forward to it, my man. Thanks again.
Go
Josh
get
Hayes,
those tight ends, Josh.
Yes,
get them.
Yes, exactly. And we did have a timeout with Josh. Our good buddy Bryce is not only audio engineering the podcast tonight. He's commissioning this draft. And Josh he autoed because he was on the air with us, which doesn't always happen.
Oh man.
And so we're going to get that fixed right now. In any event, Frank LaPrade, who actually is hanging out in the YouTube chat room right now, I've been following he brought a philosophical question up in his conversation when you talk about guys like Darren Armani, guys like Biplab Mandel, guys who are loading up on running backs in this draft. We're seeing it from Robert Coe as well. He said, who's being punished by taking more running backs, the person taking them or the person avoiding them? Interesting philosophical question there, Farrell. Like when you have a situation like this where you're seeing teams load up on certain positions early, Matt and Andrew Stone, and that's what I wanted to bring up here. I just actually got an email from Frank, who has been on this show before, a highly accomplished, FFPC player who's been on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. And he said here in this email, love the broadcast, and you guys are awesome. By the way, if you want to email the show, highstakesfantasyfootball@gmail.com is the way to go. We are looking at Frank saying, I'm in on Matt Stone's draft. I think hyper-fragile is the way to go statistically, and Matt may have 4 top 15 wide receivers. If you don't get an elite tight end, I would avoid mid-round and punt and take a couple late. And his running backs have upside if he hits. Love it. If you ain't first, you're last, said the great Ricky Bobby. Keep up the great work. Sincerely, Frank LaPrade. He says, P.S. They run so many designed red zone plays for Thielen. I think he gobbled up a bunch of TDs. So that is what we're getting from Frank LaPrade here tonight. You happen to agree with that? I mean, I guess, he's right. I mean, you're looking at 4 top 15 wide receivers there, Farrell. But he's going to need Pollard or Dillon. One of those, maybe both of them, have to hit if he's going to win this league.
That's his problem. If he were to just meld in one running back a little earlier, but I think he fell in love with this script. And, yeah, it's great to take those receivers and you say, man, my outcomes of receivers are right at the top, and my 4 guys are going to be wonderful. But if you're getting 6 and 8 points from your running backs, you've lost your efficiency of scoring, and so they're not going at the spot right below the quarterback. They're not getting double-digit points. Your wide receivers are not going to carry you that far. So but see, if they were there. See, in Biplab's case, on the other side here, we've got a situation where we know that he can pick up quality receivers late, and they will contribute in points across the 4 opportunities to score. But Pollard and Davis, it's going to be very, very difficult to score out of those positions, and it's going to be very difficult to find someone down here that's going to score for him. Can you think of anyone?
Not off the top of my head, but my brain is a little addled right now. So that's something that we're going to find out, right, Farrell?
Yeah, I want to stick with it.
stick with it. Let's get through the last couple of rounds here. After we were talking to Josh Hayes, I want to get back to it. You let it off with Baker Mayfield going to Josh Hayes, and then you're looking at Jalen Waddle after that to Rob Vieira as he secures the rookie wide receiver out of Alabama going to Miami. Jonnu Smith after that, followed by Hunter Henry. So the Patriots tight ends go back-to-back here. Mecole Hardman after that, and then another couple of tight ends, Gerald Everett, Blake Jarwin, followed by Henry Ruggs, the receiver out of Las Vegas, Nyheim Hines after that, followed by Justin Fields, Corey Davis, and Alexander Madison to complete round 11. The start of round 12, Jared Cook, Rob Gronkowski, Cole Kmet, a trio of tight ends. That's tight end 20, tight end 21, and you guessed it, tight end 22 here in the 12th round. Russell Gage and Giovanni Bernard go right after that. Giovanni Bernard, the new Tampa Bay Buccaneers receiver. Russell Gage, the new wide receiver 2 for Atlanta, we think. Anthony Firkser after that, right after Blake Jarwin. They go Anthony Firkser right there from the 7th spot. Darnell Mooney, David Johnson. Austin Hooper goes after Hunter Henry. I believe that, who is that picking from the 4 spot tonight, Farrell? I just had it in front of me, and now I lost it. My computer's having some issue. That's Biplab. Got it. Okay, so he goes Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper. David Dodds gets Kirk Cousins. Rob Vieira takes Devin Singletary, and then Zach Ertz, the final pick of the 12th round here tonight in the FFPC Pros versus Joe's draft. Let's keep cooking here, ladies and gentlemen, and get through round 13 as these drafters just finished this. Pretty incredible pace we're on right now, 66 minutes into it, and we are already 13 rounds in. Devontae Parker and Elijah Moore are the first 2 selections. Parker to Josh Hayes. Elijah Moore right after that to Rob Vieira. Marvin Jones, Alien Fantasy, David Dodd selects him. Daryl Williams from Kansas City goes to Biplab. And then a pair of rookie receivers, Rashad Bateman out of Baltimore, Rondale Moore out of Arizona. J.D. McKissick, the former pass-catching running back, and now maybe backup feature back. I don't know. J.D. McKissick goes there at the 13:07 tonight. Matt Ryan, Jalen Rhaegar, and then Carson Wentz will be backing up Justin Fields for Team 10 tonight. Jamison Crowder and then Nelson Aguilar. Jamison Crowder to Marcus Grant. Nelson Aguilar off the board with the final pick of the 13th round tonight. Farrell, let's talk a little bit. I know these are rookie receivers, but let's try to look at it from a pros versus Joe as a redraft standpoint here with Rashad Bateman and Rondale Moore. Who do you like better for immediate production this year, 2021? Is it Bateman in Baltimore, or is it Rondale Moore out in the desert in Arizona?
Moore, because what he will be doing at the end of the season. It's a 17-week contest. I think Moore, the opportunities for this guy to score points between, after the bye week, I'm not sure exactly when their bye week is, but after the bye week, after he gets himself into this offense, after he and Murray begin to click a little bit, this tandem could be outstanding. Bateman's a 50-catch receiver. What amazes me in the 12th round when we start talking about receivers, Balky, we've got 2 guys there that could catch 80 balls, Mooney and Gage. And Mooney will be more prolific with what he does with the ball after he catches it. This is an excellent wide receiver to pick up in the 12th round, and I'm a little surprised that player is still available there.
I know you like Nelson Aguilar in New England this year, a guy who dropped a lot of passes for Philadelphia, a guy that the Eagles fans are counting on this year and fantasy owners alike for production in Philadelphia. Catching balls from Jalen Hurts is Jalen Rhaegar. I don't think we talk about him a whole lot on this show. He was a first-round receiver last year, a player that the Eagles drafted over Justin Jefferson. How likely is it that he makes the sophomore leap, Farrell, as long as we're on the subject of young wideouts in the NFL?
If you love Hurts, you've got to put Rhaegar with him, and that's you've got to wish to invest in this receiver because Hurts won't be successful throwing the ball at all if Rhaegar does not grow into being his number 1 target. There's not a lot of receiver talent on this team, and Rhaegar's got to deliver.
Moving on here, I don't think there's anything else I want to talk about in the 13th. No, let's move on to the 14th round because it's another rainbow round here. A lot of crazy stuff happening. Kicking things off is Gabriel Davis as he goes to Edward and Mike Vu with the 1401. Tariq Cohen, the backup running back in Chicago, to NFL.com's Marcus Grant. All those stones picking in the 10 spot tonight. They cannot get away from receivers. They draft receiver number 8. Matt and Andrew Stone take Paris Campbell as wide receiver 63. Their 8th receiver, their first receiver they have drafted since round 8. They are back on the proverbial horse, as it were. Hayden Hurst after that, the 3rd tight end drafted by Fantasy Mojo. T.Y. Hilton to Robert Coe right after that at the 14:05. Eric Ebron. This marks the 3rd out of the last 4 picks that Nelson Verbit from Dynasty Depot has utilized on tight ends. Blake Jarwin in the 11th, Anthony Ferkser in the 12th, Eric Ebron in the 14th. He is just trying to fire away, see what sticks, and I'm willing to bet at least one of those guys works out for him this year. Emmanuel Sanders, the new Buffalo Bill, to Derek Kappas here in the 14:07 slot. James White after that to John Daigle as his number 4 running back. O.J. Howard, another guy that another team here, Biplab Mandel, doesn't take a tight end until round 11, similar to Nelson Verbit. And then similar to Nelson Verbit, now 3 of his last 4 picks on tight ends, Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper, and O.J. Howard, the killer H's, as the kids would say here, with those 3 tight ends. Philip Lindsay off the board at the 3rd last pick of the 14th round to David Dodds. Tua Tagovailoa is backing up Ryan Tannehill for Rob Vieira, and then Sammy Watkins going off the board with the final pick in the 14th round to Josh Hayes from rotoballer.com, who you just heard on these airwaves just a minute ago. And by the way, speaking of these airwaves, if you do not normally listen to this program, I can tell you that the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour normally airs Friday nights at 10/9 Central year-round. We don't just do it during the season. Fantasy football has become a year-round thing. We do a lot of dynasty talk, a lot of dynasty chatter, a lot of stuff year-round. Obviously, we get best balls with the FFPC going in January. We're here to help you out with that. You can always access full on-demand streaming available for listening anytime via a variety of apps if you can't hang out in the chat room with the high-stakes players and listen live. We are at hsffhour.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Audible, Google Podcasts, Amazon Alexa, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spreaker on your iPhone or your Android device as well. We're everywhere. We're everywhere. We're like Robert De Niro's character in Meet the Parents. We're everywhere, Fokker. So congratulations to you if you cannot find us, because that is a hard thing to do. We're everywhere. All right, let's get back into the 14th round here, Farrell. I just noticed this while I was talking. So you have a situation where Rob Vieira, the FFPC, the very accomplished FFPC Joe in the 2 spot, took Julio Jones, A.J. Brown, and Ryan Tannehill. Look what he did in the back half of his draft. Gets Will Fuller and Jalen Waddle from Miami, and then look who his second quarterback is, Tua Tagovailoa. So he is in a situation right now where he has Tennessee and Miami. Have you ever thought about going with that strategy in a best ball before, trying to lock up essentially the better part of 2 passing games?
I think about that strategy wherever I draft, and there are some wonderful stacks. Indianapolis, Miami, which we've just been proven here. The Raiders, once you take Waller out of the equation, that becomes an affordable stack. And the New York Giants. There's plenty of stacks that you can get in double-digit rounds that make a lot of sense and bring a lot of continuity to your double-digit drafting. You know, we haven't talked much about Derek Kappas tonight, and this is a perfect example of what we're talking about, and his team is quickly becoming my favorite one in this draft. He 4th round Mike Evans, and he waited again until the 12th before he took receivers. We talked about Mooney and Moore. He added Emmanuel Sanders, which we talked about last night, how Sanders should have a really great role with Buffalo. His 2 quarterbacks are solid, and he has the tight end. A lot of purple on this board between the 10 and 13 rounds. He has the tight end with the biggest upside of any tight end in this draft, and that's Gerald Everett out of Seattle. I think tremendous things could happen there. Maybe Gerald Everett is your next Waller as a tight end, and that in the 11th round will deliver for Derek.
Keep in mind, when we had Derek Kappas on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, it was the first Friday in June. I want to say, I can't remember what date that was, but it was the first Friday in June we had him on. And this was a player that had some success in the main event, had significant success in the Football Guys Players Championship, did not play a ton of teams, though. So he is a more than capable player of knowing, what he needs to do in order to be successful at the highest level in the FFPC. And he's been doing a lot of Football Guys drafts this year. I don't know how many slims he's been doing, but you can look at his team construction here, Farrell, and even the layman can look at this. Oh, I see. he pounded running backs and receivers equally early. He got his quarterbacks and his tight ends in the mid-rounds. Now he's going for the high upside guys, the guys that can benefit from an injury. Jamal Williams in Detroit, Darnell Mooney, who knows what's going to happen in Chicago. You have Rondale Moore, the first-round pick in Arizona, playing behind, Christian Kirk and A.J. Green. How long is it before he leapfrogs those guys? You have Emmanuel Sanders on his team. Again, not the sexiest guy in the world, but you got the beat writer from The Athletic, Joe Buscaglia, talking up Emmanuel Sanders every chance he gets. He gets him in the 14th round here. And, oh, by the way, another handcuffed running back here in the 15th round that we'll get to in a second that is backing up a guy who is making waves right now for not talking about how soon he's going to be back on the field. He might have gotten a starting running back in the 15th round. So let's move on and talk about the 15th round here, Farrell. While we, I can't keep teasing it without talking about it here. That's bad radio. Even I know that's bad radio. So we'll get to it here in the 15th round. Tevin Coleman leads things off for the New York Jets here. He goes at the 15:01, followed by Darrington Evans, the backup running back in Tennessee, to Derrick Henry. He goes at the 15:02 to Rob Vieira. Tre'Quan Smith out of New Orleans to Alien Fantasies David Dodds, and then Brian Edwards from your Las Vegas Raiders, Farrell. He goes to Biff Mandel. Sam Darnold gets selected. The new Carolina Panthers quarterback is going to be backing up Lamar Jackson for John Daigle from NBC Sports Edge. Then Devontae Booker. That's the player I wanted to talk about, Farrell. I'm going to ask you about him in a second while we complete the 15th round here of coverage. Devontae Booker to Derek Kappas, Terrace Marshall, and Sterling Shepard after that to Verbit and Co. Ryan Fitzpatrick backing up Aaron Rodgers, the mustache and the beard on the same squad for Fantasy Mojo. Mo Alley-Cox to Matt and Andrew Stone here as the backup tight end for them. Surprising that they have a backup tight end. Room on the roster for a backup tight end with all those receivers. Amon-Ra St. Brown to Marcus Grant from NFL.com as his number 6 receiver. And then Daniel Jones, the number 3 quarterback drafted by Edward and Mike Vu here with the final pick of the 15th round. I talked about why I think Devontae Booker is a great pick in the 15th round. Farrell, tell me I'm wrong or agree with me. I'm really curious to your thoughts here.
I agree 100% with you. Matter of fact, I expected, based on the news we've had in the last couple of days and how it keeps being repeated about what's going on with the Giants running back Barkley, I expected Booker to go much higher than the 15th round. This is where he's been going all along. This is a steal. This is a smart pick. Booker was a good running back with the Raiders last year. He ran hard. He did well. He had 123 opportunities to carry the ball and a good yards per carry average for a team that was not gifted at the offensive line. It's a good pickup for the Giants, and now he's going to be able to carry the job on his shoulders early, perhaps. And maybe once he gets started, he doesn't necessarily cede some of those opportunities that he's earned. I think this is a very good ball player in the 15th round of this pick.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the situation, and I know Devontae Booker's let some people down in the past. I know he's burned some people from Dynasty. And Farrell, the PSA here, as we have not gotten into this is a philosophical thing for me. And I've argued with Dizzle, who, by the way, is hanging out in the chat room right now. I've argued with him about this before. Some players say, he's off my board, right? There is no way I'll ever draft this guy again. How often do you hear this? Now, Dizzle actually, I mean, he says it in a manner where he's like, well, look, at some point I'll take any player, right? But for most people, if you're drafting in the high stakes field, you say, well, he's off my board or I'll never draft him because you know you never will get him based on where he is going or ADP is going. I feel some of my most successful teams have been when I drafted players, a proven player coming off a bad season. So a guy that burned me the year before, I go back to the well and he comes through for me. That's why I personally will never say, and I think a lot of smart people in this draft that we're covering right now will say the same thing. I will never say that I will never draft a player again, right? Because you're hamstringing yourself. Don't do that to yourself when you know that maybe you overdrafted him the year before. That doesn't mean you can't get him at a good value the following year, right?
And you're falling in a trap when you do that. Don't ever hold a grudge, Balky, and look for reasons to draft players, not reasons to take players off your list. That's what you want to do. You want to push players up the list and understand why you love the players you love. But just don't make putting together your draft list a process of elimination. It's
all about getting your guys. I've said that over and over again, and that's totally true. Be a positive fantasy football player. Don't be a negative fantasy football player. And I think when you look for reasons not to draft a player, you are being negative. Let's get into the 16th round here as we continue our positive coverage of the Pros versus Joes, Sweet Baby Jesus, League number 3 tonight here, Farrell. A lot of quarterbacks going in this round right now. You have Deshaun Watson with the first pick of the 16th round going to Edward and Mike View. Taysom Hill off the board as the number 3 quarterback for Marcus Grant. Also, I want to point out Deshaun Watson was the number 4 quarterback drafted by Edward and Mike View here. Deshaun Watson going with Daniel Jones, Trevor Lawrence, and Jalen Hurts. Derek Carr off the board to Matt and Andrew Stone. Ben Roethlisberger, the 3rd quarterback, drafted by Fantasy Mojo's Darren Armani here. Ramondre Stevenson, the rookie running back out of New England, to Robert Coe. And then you're looking at Jared Goff, the 3rd quarterback selected by Nelson Verbit. Chuba Hubbard, backup running back to Christian McCaffrey in Carolina, goes to Derek Kappas. Again, another high upside a backup running back there. Joshua Kelly to John Daigle from NBC Sports Edge tonight at the 16:09. We're looking at Zach Wilson backing up Patrick Mahomes for Biplab Mandel. Cole Beasley, will he or won't he be cut? Interesting proposition posed by Mark Cuban on Twitter today to him about getting vaccinated. Always fun stuff is Twitter. Well, that's not actually accurate. Sometimes Twitter's awful. In fact, most times Twitter's awful. Rashad Penny right after that, the penultimate pick of the 16th round. And then John Smoke Brown right after that, the final pick of the 16th round to Josh Hayes from rotoballer.com. That's what we're looking at here. 6 quarterbacks go off the board in round 16. Farrell, I feel like we're kind of justified in the analysis that we told Josh Hayes. You know, I said I would probably stay away from drafting another quarterback when he already had Josh Allen and Baker Mayfield. You said another quarterback would look good on his roster, but I also said, look, we've seen the last 2 nights. A lot of teams are loading up with a 3rd quarterback in this format, and tonight we're seeing a lot of smart people do that in this draft so far. Nelson Verbit, highly accomplished FFPC player from DynastyDepot.com. He gets 3 quarterbacks tonight. Fantasy Mojo, Darren Armani. This guy runs the whole thing. He sees the data. He knows the win rates. He's taking 3 quarterbacks tonight, including Aaron Rodgers in the 8th round. Matt and Andrew Stone, I don't know how they're doing this, but it seems like they're loading up on every position but running back. They get 3 quarterbacks tonight. Marcus Grant from NFL.com, they have 3 quarterbacks. I don't know if I can defend Edward and Mike Vu taking 4 quarterbacks. Jalen Hurts, Trevor Lawrence, Daniel Jones, Deshaun Watson. Farrell, are you down with that?
No, but that's what you do when you take 2 young quarterbacks, Hurts and Lawrence. They get their first 2 quarterbacks have 4 games of NFL experience. Now they're going to have some growing pains, but they're going to have some stellar performances. I don't know if it'll be enough to carry them, so they will go with Jones, and then they gamble on Watson. You know, Watson was in all categories, the top 3 categories. He was 1, 2, or 3 in all of the top 3 passing categories in the NFL last year, so this perhaps is a worthwhile gamble. Let's go back to our friend at the number 1 position, Mr. Hayes, and let's say what quarterback will he take if he does take a 3rd one. There may not be any left for him.
I want to go out to Exactly. I want to go out to our phone lines right now and talk to a longtime friend of this program, former guest of this program, former guest of the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown as well, and one of the best adult non-paid hockey players you will run into drafting from the 2nd spot tonight. It's Rob Vieira. Rob, welcome back onto the program, man.
Hey, Bulky. How are you, man?
I'm doing good. We're loving your draft tonight. Interesting, you get slotted with the 2nd pick tonight, and we talked about you banking these two stacks. You get Tennessee and you get Miami here. Was that part? I mean, were you looking at doing that going in, or is this something that just sort of developed as the draft went on?
I knew it at the 2-3 turn. You guys kind of called it, where I kind of wanted to get Pitts, and there was a podge of receivers there, and I was planning to stack either DK with Wilson at the 6-7 turn or Tannehill at the 8-9 if I wound up with A.J. Brown, and I figured Julio might get there too, so that was nice. And then getting the Fuller Waddle was that kind of fell into that, and then I didn't feel like I had to get Tua, but he fell at pretty good value too, so I figured what the hell, I'd go for the double super stack there.
The double super stack. I like that. That is a good team for sure. So Rob, when you have done, and I know you play a lot of football guys in main events. I don't know how many slims you actually do. I know you do play a lot of best balls. But in this type of format, how important to you is stacking? I mean, are you always, when you go into one of these, are you always looking to get some kind of a stack, or is it just not a priority for you?
Yeah, definitely. I've done probably at least 50 of the tournament ones, and I got to come down on Josh Hayes here. I did a little scouting, and he didn't take CMC in the other draft that he was in when he had the one spot. So I was kind of hoping for CMC, especially because I've done, like I said, I think I've done at least 50, and I've gotten 2 1-holes. So I'm very underweight on CMC, so I was hoping for him. But to answer your questions, yeah, definitely in the tournament. I don't feel tied to that with a non-tournament, but if you're in a tournament, it's almost like daily where you gotta go all out for just having a super team and hitting the teams that score a lot in the games that mean the most. So I was hoping. Oops, hang on here. I'm up next.
Yeah, I was just going to say, this is your final pick of the draft, Rob. Who are you looking at here?
I was looking at Tyrell Williams, of course. Dodds
yes.
Is that Dodds? Dodds and Bit have both been killing me. So that kind of threw me off. I might have to get my third quarterback instead.
I'll let you listen. I'll let you pick your third quarterback here. But one of the things, and the listeners know this, that we were talking about with quarterbacks in this before. I'm of the opinion that I think 2 quarterbacks is good because if you get good ones, you don't need to shortchange yourself at other positions by drafting a third. But yet I see in Pros versus Joe's 1, in Pros versus Joe's 2, and then once again tonight, in fact, one team even taking 4 quarterbacks. Rob, and tonight we're seeing you didn't take a quarterback with your final pick, but we're seeing a lot of teams load up with 3 quarterbacks. So I guess for me, I'm underrating the effect that 3 quarterbacks have. How many of your FFPC best ball tournament teams have 3 quarterbacks on it?
Yeah, actually, I usually go 2, especially like I said in the tournament. You're first or your last in those, so you need to be very aggressive, and I think you need to be very aggressive at receiver because you got to be filling those flex. So I try to get at least 8 or 9 receivers, which means I've got to go, maybe two quarterbacks or 2 tight ends or something like that. So I typically go 2, and when it's not a tournament, especially a team with somebody like Tua, who I'm not convinced that he's even going to start all year, I would have liked to have gotten a third, but I didn't. There wasn't anyone that was that appealing to me, so I went with the third tight end here.
Daryl Henderson was sort of the talk of the draft tonight. We didn't know how high he would go. Farrell and I both thought that as we get closer here, Daryl Henderson's actually going to be pushed up higher than the mid-5th. Is that how you see it too?
Yeah, it was between Cup and him for me at that 502. And I decided there was probably going to be a running back that I'd be okay with coming back. And, of course, Dodds got me with Edmonds again. So it didn't work out. I went with Sermon, who I kind of like Sermon in the tournament because I think he's got a pretty good schedule down the stretch. But in this format, I would have definitely preferred probably Henderson in the 5th and a receiver in the 6th. Or if I would have gotten Edmonds, it would have worked out. I gambled and lost in that one.
Rob, Sky Eilers in the YouTube chat, obviously a guy you've tangled with in Football Guys Players Championship and FFPC main events before, a guy we've had on this program, guy who's drafted in Pros versus Joe's, had some success at it. He said he's surprised that Xavier Jones didn't go tonight. He led the NCAA in scoring in 2019, and nobody drafted him tonight, and basically it's him and Daryl Henderson in the backfield. Can you make a case for drafting Xavier Jones in an 18-round slim format like this?
Yeah, so I was mulling that very hard. I'm in a slow main event, and I was sitting on the clock when all this went down, and I was in the 17th round, and I could have taken him. And I think that they're gonna bring. I wound up going with Duke Johnson, believe it or not, because I think they're going to.
Do you think he goes to Los Angeles then?
I don't know that he does, but I've been a Duke apologist for a number of years, and I've paid the price for it. but I still think he's going to have a role somewhere. So, and if not, if he doesn't line up there, I'm probably cutting those positions anyway. So it literally came down to those two guys for my dart, and I would have taken them both, but he got scooped up a couple of picks after mine. So I think he's as good as any. If I needed another dart in the 18th, I would have been considering him, but I already got my 6 RBs, so I couldn't take another one.
Rob, as we wide scope this final question for you tonight, as we look at this entire draft here tonight, I talked about this earlier. I think the running backs fell a little bit more than we saw in the first two drafts so far. I think the wide receivers and the tight ends, to a certain extent, got pushed up. We saw a lot of quarterbacks drafted tonight. What's the takeaway from this draft from you tonight? What's the thing that stood out to you? What's the trend that either stood out to you or maybe surprised you a little bit as this thing unfolded?
I actually thought this one was fairly typical. I think the ship chasers they've kind of started the receiver at all costs. You see Matt Stone embraced that theory.
Right, yeah.
But the thing for this one, for me, there wasn't a lot of ADP that slipped. I know Mojo kept scooping it up on his end, and then, like I said, Bipp and Dodds kept getting me on our end. So there really wasn't a lot of value that slipped. So because I have no problem. I'm in a main event right now where I went 3 of my top 4 picks were, or not a main event, the big dog. 3 of the top 4 were all tight ends. And so I have no problem being fragile in a position if there's value. But in this case, there just wasn't a lot of great value. So I had to go for stacks to get some sexiness.
We always get sexiness anytime Rob Vieira hops aboard the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. Rob, it was a pleasure talking to you. Congratulations on a great draft tonight. Good luck to you in the Football Guys Players Championship and the FFPC main event. Obviously, if anybody wants to follow Rob, you can do so on Twitter like I do at RobV16, RobV16. And listen, I don't know, has the hockey season wrapped up for you, or are you still hitting the rink?
So the hockey season never wraps up for me, but I did have my 3rd knee surgery, so I'm just
wow.
I'm just getting. But I'm back at it. Just started back this week.
Well, listen, I'll tell you, take it easy on that knee and draft a few more teams, man. Nobody. It's better to be safe than sorry, right? And we wish you nothing but the best, not only on the rink but in the fantasy football arena as well. Rob, be good. We'll talk to you again soon, dude.
Yeah, good to talk to you. See you guys.
Rob Vieira, ladies and gentlemen, one of the most accomplished players that we've ever had on this show, no question. A guy who's had a lot of success in the FFPC main event and the Football Guys Players Championship, and a guy we always like chatting fantasy football with tonight. All right, so I've avoided talking about it to this point, Farrell, but this has been a very difficult podcast for me, as I do have the NBA Finals on right now. 74 seconds to go in the game, and the Suns are mounting a bit of a comeback. I'm getting very nervous at this point. I apologize that the podcast has been a little bit disjointed. I will wholeheartedly admit, I have not dedicated all of my facilities into putting my attention into this podcast tonight as the Suns draw closer. Oh man, this is going to be really unfortunate if it ends up the way it's trending here. But hopefully the Bucks can close it out. Farrell, let's we got about 27 minutes left in the show. Let's kind of take a look at some of the teams tonight as we go through. We'll start with Team 1 in his construction. That's Josh Hayes from Rotoballer.com. He ends up getting Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield at quarterback, running backs Christian McCaffrey, DeAndre Swift, Raheem Mostert, Leonard Fournette, Tevin Coleman, Malcolm Brown. Receivers are DK Metcalf, Chase Claypool, Jarvis Landry, Michael Pittman, Devontae Parker, Sammy Watkins, John Brown. Tight ends are Noah Fant, Zach Ertz, and Jimmy Graham. A little bit worried about the tight end depth. I know you have a little bit of concern at quarterback. I don't, as far as the depth goes there. I think it's going to be okay. But the tight ends, to me, are what concern me. The rest of the team is pretty balanced, man.
I think it's a good team. I don't think he will challenge for the victory, but I think it's a solid team. I can't really pinpoint what's missing in it. Perhaps it is that tight end, but I don't know, Balky. There's something about the team that just leaves me saying, okay, but not enough.
Okay, but not enough. Hopefully that's what the Suns will be saying as Chris Middleton hits a jumper here tonight to put the Bucks up 6. 56.9 seconds to go. Anybody who's listening to this podcast later is like, shut up, Balky. We already know what happens in the game. Rob Vieira, let's get into his team from the 2 spot. Ryan Tannehill, Tua Tagovailoa are the quarterbacks. The running backs, Dalvin Cook, Trey Sermon, Michael Carter, Devin Singletary, Darrington Evans, Rashad Penny. Receivers, A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, Cooper Kupp, Will Fuller, Jalen Waddle, Elijah Moore, Jacoby Myers. Tight ends are Kyle Pitts, Dallas Goedert, and C.J. Uzomah. Again, I said this, I can't remember whose draft I said this about last night, but you can tell Rob Vieira is a high-stakes player who's drafted a lot of FFPC best ball tournament teams. This is a really strong team, I feel. You're looking at a lot of youth at running back, a lot of upside at running back in the second half of the draft. I think he's good with the double, what did he call it, the double super stack team with the Titans and the Dolphins here. And then, you get Uzomah as your third tight end in the 18th round. Dallas Goedert as your number 2, and you still have Pitts. I like this team quite a bit.
I do too, and I think one of the things we could talk about with his quarterback selection, Tua was 6-3 as a starter last year, and I think among young quarterbacks he might be the most underrated by not only fantasy players but just by football fans across the horizon. Football fans, he improves with great targets this year, a different type of player at the wide receiver position than what he's enjoyed before. There's belief that the running back, Gaskin, will do the same thing, that the entire backfield will improve on this team. I like this team. There's a tight end that came into this team from Boston College, last name Long, I believe, and I like that player to develop as the year goes on. So, yes, his late stack of Miami was very, very impressive. And then just flipping back, we were talking earlier about team number 1. I looked at some film earlier or over the weekend, Zach Ertz, and I somehow believe that the trade is not forthcoming because NFL teams have decided that Zach Ertz has hit the proverbial performance wall. And so that was my problem with that pick. But this team, I like it. And we talked about Devin Singletary, who can flash. The number 2 team, a solid chance in this draft. And if Michael Carter hits, he goes even further.
Team 3 here, David Dodds from Alien Fantasy, Kyler Murray and Kirk Cousins at quarterback, running backs Nick Chubb, Chase Edmonds, Damian Harris, Zach Moss, Phillip Lindsay. Receivers are Justin Jefferson, Tyler Lockett, Brandon Cooks, Marvin Jones, Tre'Quan Smith, Cole Beasley, Alan Lazard, Tyrell Williams. Tight ends Travis Kelce, Tyler Higbee, and Jonnu Smith. Farrell, I think he might have the best tight ends in this league. I love the quarterbacks in Murray and Cousins. I think Cousins is underrated. He's deep at receiver, and so sometimes when you look at the receiver position, and you look and it doesn't look sexy, it doesn't have to look sexy because sometimes and listen, I am proof positive of this. You cannot look sexy and still be productive. I mean, I base my whole lifestyle on not looking sexy but being productive, and I think that's what David Dodd's receivers could be right here. And then the running backs I think are interesting. Like Chubb is awesome. After that, I don't know, Edmonds, Harris, Moss, Lindsay, there's some upside, but you got to kind of hit on 2 of those guys in order to compete. But the tight ends are really good. This is a very Doddsian team, I think, as we look back on his drafts in years past.
I like all these players. Phillip Lindsay's contribution will be large to this team. You're right. Cousins is underappreciated by drafters, and that's why he was available this late. 35 touchdowns from him last year. We had a commentary about how Thielen is always open in the red zone. Well, Cousins it takes 2 to tango, and he's been a big, big part of that. I think that the receivers that go into 15, 16, and 17, while there's a lot of guys that fell asleep here, we've got some guys to talk about as we move towards the other end of the draft. Dodge is still hitting home runs. Smith, Beasley, still to be determined. And my favorite pick of the draft this late, Tyrell Williams, who when he plays does nothing but score touchdowns. This was a great draft by David Dodds.
David Dodds, no stranger to success, as is the defending overall champion of the pros versus Joe's, Biplab Mandel. Very interesting draft. A lot of smack talking he had to deal with John Terry in the chat room on Blog Talk Radio. Here's how it ended up. Patrick Mahomes and Zach Wilson at quarterback. Alvin Kamara, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, J.K. Dobbins, Latavius Murray, Daryl Williams, Damian Williams, and Elijah Mitchell at running back. Receivers, Jamar Chase, Jerry Jeudy, Juju Smith-Schuster, Michael Gallup, Antonio Brown, Brian Edwards. Tight ends, Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper, and O.J. Howard. So, Farrell, a lot of times when people will load up on volume receivers to try to get as much as they possibly can to cover up the fact that they ignored him early, they wait till the end of the draft. Biplab did not. He started in the 5th round and pounded him hard until the end of the 9th. So he got essentially 5 top 42 receivers, despite going 3 running backs to start off his draft. He's obviously elite at quarterback. He locks up the Saints' backfield. I don't know about O.J. Howard. I'm not too sure about Austin Hooper. Hunter Henry should be okay, but tight end to me is the weakness on this team. I think he's great everywhere else.
I think you need one more quarterback just to ensure with injury. I think you should have got him in the 15th round when he got Edwards. I like Edwards, but not at the expense of a quarterback when you have Zach Wilson as your other quarterback. Now, his mix of wide receivers there in the middle, for a while there, I thought he was getting too much of the same type of receiver, explosive downfield guys. But he came back with pass catchers, Gallup and Juju Smith-Schuster. And Gallup is part of a group that could be 3 receivers to catch 1,000 yards. Only 5 teams have done it. Balky, here's a little trivia question for you. We all know in the Indianapolis Colts with Peyton Manning at quarterback had 3 receivers with 1,000 yards, that it was Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne. Who was the third one with over 1,000 yards?
Oh, Marvin Harrison, Reggie, Brandon Stokely?
There you go, baby. You nailed it. And Brandon, you're one of the few that can nail that. And, Gallup is a similar type kind of player that you might not expect, but, boy, he could have a big, big year. So I really liked that draft. But there's just some holes in it, tight end, and I would have preferred another quarterback.
I'm sorry, Giannis Antetokounmpo just hit 50 points.
Your team
and the
is
Bucks
getting
are
ready
win.
to get a championship.
They're going to win.
They're getting ready
great.
to get a championship.
Oh, man.
It's going to be wonderful.
Something
and how many games did you see live during the playoffs this year?
What's funny? Farrell, I was at 2 games this year, including the only game they lost at home in the postseason, which was game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals against Atlanta. And I was like, because my co-host for my terrestrial radio show in the afternoon is very superstitious, and he said, you cannot go to another game because they're going to lose. Well, me and my best friend went down there for game 4 of the NBA Finals, and we went down there, and we were just going to party in the Deer District. Well, we ended up paying for standing room only tickets, and we went in, and I got to tell you, one of the best experiences of my life. So I got to see 2 games of this, what looks like to be a championship run in person. I will never forget it for the rest of my life, and this is something, I got to call my dad after the show tonight. He just turned 70, Farrell, on the day the Bucks won Game 5. And he saw one championship in his lifetime. I've never seen one in my lifetime. In fact, this will be the first time since the 1960s Green Bay Packers that a national sporting event will be won on Wisconsin soil. The Super Bowl is different because it's played, wherever.
Sure.
The Milwaukee Braves, and the Milwaukee Bucks, they won their titles out of the state. So this will be the first time in 60 years that a national sporting event is won on Wisconsin soil, and I only wish I could be down there in the Deer District to do it. That's going to be it. 3, 2, and 1, and the Milwaukee Bucks are world champions. I'm at a loss. I'm at a loss for words.
Congratulations.
Thank you. That's so great. So great. I mean, Giannis Antetokounmpo. What can you say? This was great. And Farrell, as I'm doing pros versus Joes with you tonight, covering the best fantasy football players in the world, drafting their drafts, which has prevented me from being in the Fiserv Forum tonight watching this game, I can tell you without a doubt that if I were to say there's no place I'd rather be than covering this draft, it would be a 100% lie. But if I could be in 2 places, I'm glad I'm here and covering this draft with you. So let's keep going here. We just did Biplab's team. Let's go over to John Daigle's team from NBCSportsEdge.com. He gets Lamar Jackson and Sam Darnold as his quarterbacks, Ezekiel Elliott, Aaron Jones, David Johnson, James White, Joshua Kelly, and Kadre Allison from Atlanta as his running backs. DJ Moore, Brandon Ayuk, Robbie Anderson, Deebo Samuel, Marquise Brown, Mecole Hardman, Rashad Bateman, and Nico Collins at wide receiver. Tight ends are Mark Andrews and Adam Troutman. Now, if you squint your eyes, you're going to see a lot of similarities to Biplab Mandel's team here with John Daigle. And I don't know if you know John Daigle's story, but this is a guy who gallivants all around the country, and he covers and he He hangs out, getting internet wherever he can, and puts out his content at NBC Sports Edge and drafts where he can. I think he did a really solid job here tonight. It's pretty close to Biplab Mandel's team.
I don't like the upside of the receivers. I don't see how they're going to catch enough balls to help him win. That's Marquise Brown, Mecole Hardman, Rashad Bateman. To a degree, Deebo Samuel, which Deebo's season was ruined last year by injury, so I'm hoping that I'm wrong about that. So the receiver aspect from the 7th round on, I don't like. He did a nice job with landing David Johnson late, as well as James White, who will catch a lot of passes for him. And I would rather someone else gamble on the rookie tight end rather than myself from down in New Orleans.
Moving on here, as my daughter is just thrilled that the Bucs won, and my wife just woke her up and brought her down into the studio here tonight. She is loving life here. Congratulations, Emma. We did it. Moving on to Derek Kappas, the team that we talked in full about earlier in the draft, Farrell. You have Russell Wilson, Matthew Stafford at quarterback, Austin Eckler, Travis Etienne, Kareem Hunt, Jamal Williams, Devontae Booker, and Chuba Hubbard at running back, Calvin Ridley, Keenan Allen, Mike Evans, Darnell Mooney, Rondale Moore, Emmanuel Sanders, and Deshaun Jackson at receiver, Logan Thomas, Gerald Everett, and Dan Arnold at tight end. Farrell, this was one of your favorite teams about 2/3 of the way through. Is it still one of your favorite teams in this draft for Mr. Kappas?
Continued to be, and he finished up with Deshaun Jackson. I wondered when we would see a little more Deshaun Jackson in these drafts, because that name will just not disappear from the NFL fields, and everybody believes that he's a big touchdown making long distance wide receiver, the speed guy of the NFL. I don't necessarily think he's got much gas left in the tank. I would have liked to have seen a little better draft from my standpoint. I don't think he needed the last tight end, Arnold, over the last 3 rounds. But, through the first, until Booker, or through Booker, I was very, very thrilled with this team, and I would still have to be. I like this team a lot.
I do too. Derek Kappas, like I said, smart guy, and he did what smart guys do in that draft. Solid teams tonight. Over to DynastyDepot.com's Nelson Verbit, ladies and gentlemen. His team: Dak Prescott, Joe Burrow, Jared Goff at quarterback. The running backs are Derrick Henry, Najee Harris, Josh Jacobs, Gus Edwards, J.D. McKissick. Receivers: Michael Thomas, Kenny Galladay, Cortland Sutton, DJ Chark, Terrace Marshall, Brashad Perriman. Tight ends: Blake Jarwin, Anthony Ferkser, Eric Ebron, and Pat Freiermuth. I think that's the first time we've seen Freiermuth drafted in the Pros vs. Joes this year. And Farrell, I'll point this out here. I am officially against the Jared Goff pick. I think he waited too long at tight end. I cannot really argue with the studs he got at running back, which I think a lot of teams did in this draft, save Matt and Andrew Stone. But the receivers don't excite me. So I don't know. This is definitely not one of my favorite teams. I think it'll be okay, but I don't see this as like a top 3 or even top 4 team in this league, with all apologies to Nelson Verbit, who is my buddy.
Nelson usually knows what he's doing, and I think he had a plan here. It probably skewed a little bit on him. That's why the 4th tight end, Freiermuth, who is my favorite tight end on this roster. Baby Gronk may score him some points before the season's over. I'm not enthused with a lot of his players here, and I'm with you. I think Nelson's had better efforts. I loved it through the 7th round, but it went a little south on him after DJ Chark in the 8th, and I think he swung and missed here, and if he had it to do over again, we'd probably see a much different mix.
My phone is blowing up right now, and I'm not touching it. I'm not going to read any more texts until the broadcast is over. We only got about 12 minutes left here. Robert Coe, the FFPC Joe, and again another accomplished Joe here. Tom Brady, Matt Ryan, Cam Newton at quarterback. Running backs are Mike Davis, James Robinson, Melvin Gordon, James Conner, Giovanni Bernard, and Ramondre Stevenson. Receivers: DeAndre Hopkins, CeeDee Lamb, Chris Godwin, Henry Ruggs, T.Y. Hilton, Sterling Shepard, Christian Kirk. Tight ends are Darren Waller and Mike Gesicki. Now, Farrell, I'm on board with him only taking 2 tight ends. In fact, I would have been good with him just taking Brady and Ryan. The Cam Newton pick was questionable, but it's 18th round. I kind of get it. You got a couple of old guys in at quarterback. Okay. Now, it's fine if you want to go receiver early, and he got 3 studs in the first 4 rounds. I think he waited too long to get his fourth receiver in Henry Ruggs, with all apologies to you as a Raiders fan, as wide receiver 50 in the 11th round. Now Hilton could come through. Sterling Shepard could have a couple of weeks. Christian Kirk could have a couple of good weeks, but that's not really their MO. And we talked about, I was fine with, I know you like Robinson. I know you don't like Davis. I think Davis is a good get for this squad, this build in round 5. And Gordon and Connor I can get on board with. So, again, doesn't look great from the running back perspective. I think it can work. I think the tight ends and quarterbacks are fine. The receivers, I think if you would have drafted a fourth receiver earlier than Ruggs, I'd like this team a lot more than I do.
It's a gamble on Henry to deliver as the fourth receiver, but look at his fifth and sixth receiver, Balky. That's exactly what you need here. T.Y. Hilton, who owns the Houston Texans, will get a chance to own them again. Sterling Shepard finished up the year with a double-digit receiving game, at least I believe it was, in the final game of the year. He took advantage of the back end of the draft. I would have taken another wide receiver, and there was a couple I liked instead of Cam Newton. You're exactly right. Christian Kirk is the forgotten man out in the desert of Arizona, and I think he will score, especially early. There's nothing that to make me think that this team won't be a contender.
I'm kind of with you on that. Let's go with Fantasy Mojo, Darren Armani's squad right here, the godfather of the FFPC pros versus Joes. Aaron Rodgers, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Ben Roethlisberger at quarterback there, and then you're looking at Saquon Barkley, David Montgomery, Daryl Henderson. He goes with him in the 5th round. Javonte Williams, the rookie out of Denver, goes with him in the 6th. He also gets Naheem Hines and then skips running back for the remainder of the draft. Devontae Adams, Devontae Smith, Curtis Samuel, Russell Gage, Jalen Rhaegar, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and Travis Fulgham as receivers, and T.J. Hockenson, Evan Ingram, and Hayden Hurst at tight end. Farrell, I'm not on board necessarily. I know you like Hayden Hurst quite a bit this year because you do believe he's going to be on the field quite a bit despite the presence of Kyle Pitts. I don't know if I like him as much there. I think Evan Ingram's okay. Hawkinson's a stud. But the position I really want to talk about here, I think he's all right at running back, assuming Barkley's health. The receivers, though. I mean, Devontae Smith is your number 2 receiver, and I think Darren would admit this, too. Like, you know, you get the 34th receiver off the board as your number 2 in round 7. You got to make some hay the rest of the way. And Samuel, Gage, Rhaegar, Valdez-Scantling, Fulgham, okay, they're all right for their value. Are they enough to make him get another FFPC main event free team by winning his league again? I don't know.
Well, Darren would have done better if he had more research materials to turn to. That's probably what held him back here. But you know, the idea sometimes is that we draft last year's team, and I think that's what we've got a little bit with some of these receivers. Now, Samuel gets a new start, and we're yet to determine. You know, Smith is a player, 165 pounds. We're going to watch him go run over and run away from NFL defenses, and it could happen. That there's a lot of could and wish, including the fact of is his quarterback going to come back and play? So you know, there's just a lot of things that a lot of question marks on this team, and then Travis Fulgham is a player that I root for, but he's just an ordinary guy. And in the 18th round, I thought Darren would wow us. I love to be wowed in the late rounds. 2 quarterbacks, you know, if you need quarterbacks, so the 2 he got, I had no complaints with in Fitz and Big Ben. But quite honestly, he's left me a little cold here as we moved into the latter part of the draft.
Now, a team that's left definitely plenty of players cold and plenty of watchers, viewers, analysts of this draft is the team that everybody will be talking about tomorrow when these draft boards get posted on social media. That's Matt and Andrew Stone in the 10 spot tonight. Justin Fields, Carson Wentz, Derek Carr at quarterback. Okay, that's solid. Fields could have a great year. Wentz and Carr should be entrenched all season. Running backs, Miles Sanders, Tony Pollard, A.J. Dillon, and Ty Johnson. Yeah. I don't know about that. The receivers, obviously the best in the league. Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, Amari Cooper, T. Higgins, Adam Thielen, Tyler Boyd, Mike Williams, Paris Campbell, and then the tight ends, Cole Kmet, Mo Alley-Cox, Jordan Akins. Farrell, this is going to sound like lazy analysis, but it was overkill on receivers, and it was not enough at running back and tight end, in my opinion.
They love receivers so much that they punted not on 1 but 2 divisions, and there were better running backs They could have scored them points than the guys that they took when they took them. Pollard in this situation is the last thing they needed, and that's what they took. Ty Johnson, buried on the depth chart for the New York Jets. I think that's all you have to say about that. The tight ends, who knows? I appreciate each of those players. Komet is a good physical-looking tight end. What's he going to do in his, what I think is his second year in the league? I don't know. There's just not enough here. This is it's kind of disappointing to see that they have this opportunity to compete. And if they had just quit, before Tyler Boyd and put a couple of running backs on the board in those rounds instead of taking Boyd and Mike Williams, perhaps we'd be talking differently about it.
We might, and that's certainly food for thought there. I think as we followed the Pros versus Joes leagues throughout the season, it'll be very compelling to see how Matt and Andrew Stone's team turns out. Could be the winner. Probably not, in my opinion. All right, moving on. Marcus Grant from NFL.com, a first-time ever competitor in the Pros versus Joes competition. Justin Herbert, Trey Lance, Taysom Hill at quarterback. You have Jonathan Taylor, Chris Carson, Ronald Jones, Kenyon Drake, Tariq Cohen, and Jeffrey Wilson at running back. Wide receivers, Robert Woods, Deontay Johnson, Laviska Shenault, Corey Davis, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Van Jefferson at receiver, George Kittle, Rob Gronkowski at tight end. I think this will be the first time I say this about any team in the Pros versus Joes competition as we wrap up week 1 tonight. Farrell, I'm down with the build. I'm down with the balance. He just happened to take a lot of players I don't like. And I think that's why I can't give it a resounding stamp of approval here.
That can happen. I love this team up through round 12, and then some things kind of came off. Lance and Hill are the same quarterback. I don't believe they belonged on the team. But at 8 and 9, when he took Ronald Jones and Kenyon Drake, I thought he was really moving in the right direction. I like Corey Travis. He did not need Crowder. Tariq Cohen is an ideal best ball player, and Jeffrey Wilson, a running back he took late. He might have hit the wrong button there because we all know that Jeff's not going to play this year. So it's a situation where he did rebound in the 18th round. What a fine player he picked in Van Jefferson, a player that I think has the potential to be a 65-catch player with the Rams.
Finally, as we wrap up our coverage for draft number 3 tonight in PVJ, Edward and Mike Vu take Jalen Hurts, Trevor Lawrence, Daniel Jones, Deshaun Watson at quarterback. The running backs are Antonio Gibson, Joe Mixon, Myles Gaskin, Alexander Madison, and Kenneth Gainwell. Receivers are Allen Robinson, Terry McLaurin, Odell Beckham, Nelson Aguilar, Gabriel Davis. Tight ends Robert Tonyan, Irv Smith, Jared Cook, and Christopher Herndon. Farrell, they really loaded up at the quarterback and tight end position. I thought the fourth quarterback was obviously overkill. I think the tight ends are actually really good, considering Herndon's your fourth and Jared Cook's your third. That's fantastic. He's got 3 what should be bell cow running backs in the first 5 rounds, which is solid. But the receivers, Nelson Aguilar is your number 4, Gabriel Davis is your number 5, and then nothing behind them. They're going to need some Herculean performances behind Allen Robinson, Terry McLaurin, and Odell Beckham. Maybe they get them. They have a non-zero chance of getting them, but I think that this team is just not the type of balance you're looking for a champ.
It's unbalanced, but it is not a bad team. Aguilar and Davis, we love Davis. We don't think he's going to get to do the things that he got to do last year, but we could be wrong. Aguilar will drop a lot of them, but you know what? The Patriots have never done this before, so it makes me think they know something we don't. And if they can get the ball to Aguilar and he can do his thing, he could be a big point scorer for this team. I don't think they needed the extra tight end. I had a moment in the spring where I was very optimistic about Herndon. The reports have not necessarily been good since then. I would have wanted another tight end if I was going to go over a fourth one, but I think that was overkill, and there were some good wide receivers on the board when they took that tight end. So I would have liked to have seen a little better or a little different drafting towards the end, but all in all, it's a very good team. I'm going to stick with them. I thought Tonyan, especially as he gets his quarterback back, it was a real value, and I wonder why this tight end's not being drafted a little earlier.
Farrell, great analysis from you, as always, as you were on point for all 3 nights of our broadcast this week. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for another 2 hours again. we will be back live on Friday night. No live draft coverage, but I'm sure we'll get into a little Football Guys analysis with our guest from 10 o'clock until 11 o'clock Eastern time on Friday. Everybody go register for the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship main event at kffsc.com. Farrell, we certainly appreciate you hanging out, dude, and we'll do this again. We won't do this exact thing on Friday, but I'll talk to you again on Friday, man.
Enjoy your victory, Balky. Congratulations.
Thank you, man. Got to light up the cigar here shortly. Farrell Elliott, ladies and gentlemen, you follow him on Twitter at jfarrellelliott, and you follow the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship on Twitter at KFFSC. I want to thank Josh Hayes from rotoballer.com, Rob Vieira for calling in tonight and talking a little bit about their draft. That is going to do it for our program tonight. Thanks to Darren Armani, Farrell Elliott, the FFPC, our producer and mutual friend Rob, audio engineer, my best friend Bryce, and most of all of you listeners for hanging out with us tonight, despite the NBA Finals being on. All right, so I teased it earlier, 10-9 Central. We will be back. Nine-time Football Guys League champion Adrian Kessel will be our guest. Drafted a bunch of FPC teams this year. We're going to get his thoughts on how his drafts are going and how to win the big money this year. Register for the best ball tournament, the FPC. Get $400 off each main event team on your account today if you already bought one. And then don't forget that main event EDS deadline is in 6 days. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. Bucks in 6. Your week continues now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, presented by MyFFPC.com. It was broadcast live and heard around the world. Balky and Farrell will be back next week with more analysis, interviews, and advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk with you again next week.
It's really weird when your team wins a title like this and you're working and you're on the air. Well, working in quotation marks, but it really hasn't sunk in. I'm getting ready to celebrate right now. So many texts and calls to make. Thanks so much for listening and sticking this out. I know this wasn't my finest work, but I appreciate you all listening. And we'll be back 10-9 Central Friday. And don't forget, more Pros versus Joes coverage the following week, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. We ain't leaving, to quote Jordan Belfort in Wolf of Wall Street. We're not leaving. We're not bleeping leaving. Go Bucks. Bucks in 6. Congratulations. And we'll talk to you on Friday, everybody.